Hello and welcome to Why Medics Matter, a podcast for doctors by doctors. We are your hosts. I'm Dr. Amy Burbridge.
And I'm Dr. Simon Fraser. And it is a huge privilege to be joined by Professor Namita Kumar, who I think anybody in education knows. And I think the thing I'd say what she's most famous for, I think making Northeast one of the best places to train. And we want to talk about how we make things good for residents and good for educators. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
You've got lots of titles.
I do.
And lots of roles, and it's about these things often move around. So what are your main responsibilities and hats you wear at the minute?
So I have two major responsibilities. I think what has happened over the past 12 to 13 years, organisations have changed and titles have changed. And so we've adapted as postgraduate deans to fit in with what's going on in the service within England. So I was originally appointed postgraduate dean for the North East, North Cumbria in 2013. I became the regional dean in 2019 for North East and Yorkshire. So we're working differently. That's one of my big roles at the moment, and my other role is National Dean for Postgraduate Mental, we'll have to edit that, Postgraduate Medical and Dental Education, Oversight, Risk and Delivery. So important, I can't even say it all, but there you go, and that's for England.
So what I really want to get a feel for, I guess, is one of the things I was watching some videos, and one of the things you said was the best part of your job is welcoming new doctors in training each year. And what can we do and what can our listeners do to really make doctors feel welcome?
Okay, so I think this is about making sure they're part of the team. Now, we do have some of our older colleagues hankering back to the firm structures, particularly in hospitals. You don't have to have a firm structure, but you can be nice to everyone you work with. So things that I found, particularly when I was still doing the acute take, not introducing everyone in the morning, not saying hello to the ward clerk. I mean, the ward clerk used to say to me, you're the only consultant who says hello when you come in. Not doing a round of introductions, whatever you're doing, be it a clinic, be it a ward round, be it a post-take round, not working out who's there doing what role. And that is something that us as senior medics can do. It's not a management responsibility. We're running those clinical teams. And we are doing that less and less. And I appreciate life is tough for everybody, but we're running that team. We need to be effective. And those are really basic things that we should be doing. Other things are, things like we used to do is take the team for coffee, go for lunch together. That's hard, but you can organise to go out after work. It takes a bit more time and effort. I do a lot of that. I'm regarded as the party dean. I'm often dinners for colleagues, but it's the glue that sticks the team together. That social contact, however you do it, needs to suit the team. And because otherwise, when things go wrong at work professionally, which they do, it becomes personal. And it's not usually personal. It's usually what's gone on in the workplace on that day. So I think there's lots of things we can do. I think there are also increasing issues with bad behaviour that our more junior colleagues are wanting to report and expect support from us. And as senior doctors, we can't be bystanders. We do EDI training, we do bystander training, but when we see something not quite right, many of us just walk away and don't say anything, don't escalate it, don't deal with it. So I think there is something about our clinical leadership, and are we doing the things that we should be doing? And if not, how can we support people to do that?
Just to delve into that a little bit, particularly about the bystander and I guess the whistleblowing in a way. Trainees will come to me, resident doctors, and they'll say, I've seen this has happened. And I'll be like, okay, let's talk about it. Let's debrief. But also it'd be really good if you pop this in an email. Are you happy for me to escalate this? No. I don't want to do that. And they'll often say to me, if I report it, I'll never get a job in this place, or I'll never get a job in the deal, or whatever it is. And I'm like, it doesn't work like that. There's a huge amount of fear,
Yes.
doctors. And is there anything that we can do you think, to help allay that fear?
So some of this is myth. Some of it's true. Some of it's absolutely true. But some of this is myth. And I think one of the other things that's happened in the past decade or so is revalidation for us. And it's really hard to investigate something which hasn't come to you from a person prepared to put their name to it, because you can't then go and investigate someone which could potentially be career ending for them. So you have a duty of care to both parties. But I think we should base this on fact. I mean, we have a massive quality machine for education and training, and most of our resident doctors aren't aware of that. And over the years, I've tried very hard to teach trainees in the Northeast, North Cumbria, about, education governance, education quality, and even revalidation. And when we used to do this routinely when I started, and the feedback was rubbish. And this is a good reason why you don't just go on what feedback and what the learner wants. They are required to know about revalidation. It's a professional responsibility. They will be responsible for their own revalidation once they finish training. But whilst they're in training, we do it as part of the training process. And many of them pop out at the other end and go, what is going on here? And no one ever told me. And there is something about, you don't know what you need to know until you do, or you get into trouble. And if you get into trouble, that is a terrible time to try and work out how the system actually works. So I think we could be better at publicising where we have intervened and what the impact has been. And certainly that's one of the things we did in the Northeast and North Cumbria. We have a Raising Concerns page on our website. I think we also have to acknowledge that people will raise concerns in many, many ways to many, many people. I mean, do you remember when we had people wanted all patients to contact the NHS through one phone number? It might have been 111, and they didn't want us to go to A&E or go to the GP or what, but actually people will raise concerns in the way that feels most comfortable to them at the time that's right for them. And we need to be flexible enough to be able to respond and make sure that our processes are robust enough that they can be escalated and dealt with by the right person. So I've had many doctors in training contact me directly. It's come up through different routes. But also I've seen some quite unprofessional behaviour where I've been bypassed, the team's been bypassed, and things have gone to quite national and external levels. And I just think, well, why not have the discussion? Because you never know. I might have been able to do something that might have helped solve the problem. Because, and I'm sure there are many doctors out there who say, well, she's saying all that, but she didn't do it. But I always try. I always read every email. It does not go to someone else looking at it on my behalf unless I've had a look at it. So I think this is a two-way relationship. But I think any opinions on whether or not things will get dealt with, I mean, there's another thing, things will never change. Now, in my time, which is 30 plus years, you'd never have had an Asian female postgraduate dean. You wouldn't. Things do change. They do change. Trainees weren't removed from services that weren't providing proper care. I've done that. So things do change. And I know my colleagues have as well. And those aren't easy things to do. I think there is something about basing opinion on fact, and we need to be better at getting that information out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Namita, you mentioned there's some myths there and some truths. What do you think are the truths, or I suppose the challenges to build trust? Because I think there's still that real insecurity, and I think
there is.
What's your thoughts?
So what's my thought? I think the postgraduate deans are really there to try and help training. They honestly, this isn't a glory job, if you like. We're doing it because there are glory jobs, but this is something that we all do because we genuinely want to improve training. And it is a bit of the system that's often hidden. And I have my own personal view. I mean, a colleague of mine said to me once, postgraduate deans should be seen and not heard. And I completely disagree with that, because we should be seen, we should be heard, because that should give our colleagues in training confidence that we're there supporting them. And that's one thing that I have tried to do in my time, hence all the videos, some of which are delightful, some of which are very embarrassing, so that people know that I'm there and I'm trying to do this job to improve training. I'm not doing it for any other reason. And training will improve patient care. And that's a fundamental belief for me, that really education is the key to most things if we get it right and do it appropriately. So how we communicate and other things were, Twitter before it was X. For me, it was always about how do I communicate with colleagues who don't work the way I work or the way I've learned to work in my professional life. So we tried X, we tried Twitter. Obviously, there are views on that platform now. Instagram, I've never really got a handle on. I did try to get a corporate Instagram, and that was one of the things I got told off for, and I've never done. That was several organizations ago. Emails, newsletters, and I think it's you have to use a number of ways of communicating so that you get and it's for those of us who've done educational theory, it's learning preference, it's communication preference. How are people wanting their information? Are we absolutely making sure we use all the tools available to us, which we have many of? I mean, what I'm finding recently is people are putting things on Teams chats, and I just don't look. I'm not used to it. And I find it 3 days later and it was urgent and I didn't do it. So I have to learn and adapt as well to get the information, because you have to be available for everyone. So the same way about communicating, you also have to be receptive and make sure you get it from all routes as well. So I think the biggest thing we could have done is communicate better, but that has been the way we've worked over the past 15 years or so has changed. Communications are far more tightly controlled. So we have to find other ways of getting the methods out. And obviously since COVID, face-to-face is not as big as it was. So we have to keep changing and adapting. But the bottom line is, if people don't know that and they don't feel safe, that's a job for us to do.
One of the things you mentioned earlier on, which was the creating the team. And for people, clearly you've done a lot to lead by role modeling and setting the culture for the Northeast. And for those people listening who are responsible for a team, we've talked a little bit about some of the stuff, but how do you move people to do that? How do you motivate people when they say, I'm just too busy, there's much time, I don't have a firm, I'm stuck in the past?
Okay, so I think first of all, we've all done leadership training, haven't we? Which is, I know I'm laughing, but some of it is life-changing and brilliant. And some of it, you just sit there and go, I could never see how I apply this in my workplace. But I think first thing is understanding what your preferred way of working is. Are you an autocrat, which I wouldn't advise as the only and best way? Are you consensual? Do you use a coaching style? What is it that is your preferred way of working? And then you need to work out what your team prefers. And all your members of your team will have a different way. Some will want to be told how to do it. Some will want to believe they're making the decision and advising you. Some will want you to bring them on and coach them into making a decision. So you have to understand all of that. And then you have this third box of what absolutely needs to be done in a particular way. Where do we have slack? And I think you need to adapt how you behave with the problem you're trying to solve and the group of people you're dealing with. So dealing with your peers, you can't be autocratic. You can't. They're your peers. You just can't. But you do have to think about the people in the room and whether they're looking for you for expertise or they're looking for you to create a consensus so you can move in the same direction. So that there is something about the style. There's something about preference and the problem that you're trying to solve. But the other thing that I do is I back my team. And that's something I don't see all our leaders do. And what I've always said is, if you have a problem, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Let me know. But don't go externally without having that discussion. if we do go externally and there's a mistake made and, other people are saying that we did something wrong, I will have your back. And I think that is something that they will all say. I will absolutely defend my team. And even if they didn't talk to me about it first, I will have that discussion with them afterwards and suggest maybe we could have done that better. But I don't hang my team out to dry. They're my team. They're my responsibility. And I should absolutely be accountable for what happens.
Psychological safety, isn't it?
It is. But that is then very potentially wearing on you if you don't have that support. And there's then that about personal resilience and how you manage that. And for me, that goes back to I'm trying to do the right thing. So I don't have, I'm trying to do the right thing for my trainees and my patients. So that's what keeps me grounded.
How do we develop that, I'm going to word capability in the residents coming through? So I think the biggest transition now is from the end of residency to new consultant.
Yeah.
Because that sort of just drops on you.
It does. And I think, what I've tried to do in the Northeast North Cumbria is develop leadership and management. I think medics just doing leadership isn't right. We need you to be an effective leader. You need to be an effective manager. You need to understand how to deal with poor performance and actually do that, have difficult conversations. You need to be able to chair a meeting. You need to be able to make sure there are actions which have names attached to them with a time, because otherwise you're just not going to get there. And you need to have the sort of, the push-pull model that I'm bringing my team with me with my vision and my strategy. But then I'm also making sure afterwards the things we've agreed have been done. And I've put in an awful lot of leadership training, which we didn't really have that was effective for our trainees when I started. But I haven't been able to get the reach I wanted. It's much better than it was. But I would like everybody to do at least a day or two. And it is in the curricula. It is in everybody's curricula about how we do it. But I think one of the things is making sure that what we teach is fit for our needs. And that means that us as senior educators look at the content. Whenever I've got someone else doing a leadership program for doctors, they always take out the management aspects. And I always put in dealing with poor performance, line management, budget management.
Difficult
conversations, learning to deal with a management multi-professional team, not just a clinical multi-professional team. There's a very different mindset with a group of accountants and a group of HR directors, then a group of doctors. And then obviously within medicine, we can have the debate about how surgeons and physicians and GPs all work differently. It's the same in management circles. And we need to be able to understand their agendas and where they're coming from. So one of the things that we've also put in a fellowship so people can shadow and watch how we work, but that's actually for a very few number really, and they need to take time out of training. But it's something we do all the time. We look at the content, we look at what we're doing, and also you need authentic people to do this stuff. If you've got someone who's never led a team and never delivered, it's not believable. And then I hope that then translates back into the workplace. So the consultants and GPs do say good morning to the ward clerk and do intros before you start on your clinical day. Has that improved? I hope so. Because I think so. But it's one of those things you can't just say tick, it's done. It's got to go on. It's got to be part of your way of providing education all the time.
One of the things I've been fortunate to do is work on a longitudinal supervision model. So I've had a resident for 6-7 years. And then when we talk about leadership, you're absolutely right and say these are good courses to do, but it's almost saying, when I call them a registrar, the old grader said, I'm not training you to be a registrar, I'm training you to be a consultant. The technical stuff's easy. Training people, the technical medicine's easy to train. And I'm saying, what is going to be your leadership style? What are your preferences? What do you work on? And I think we need our supervisors in those purposeful supervision meetings to have those conversations about one. I think we need to educate the educators how to have discussions about leadership development? I don't know what your thoughts
Absolutely,
are.
and it's a GMC standard, and it's a England NHS England's quality framework standard, and that's one of the things as well that we've tried to do. And I've done senior educational faculty development as well, and we've implemented that. But the trainers are knackered. We've got a train survey coming out because they're and I absolutely see that, understand that. And I think particularly since COVID, the people who are asking to train are also being asked to deliver the service and also being asked to be more productive, which I think for some has become quite demoralizing.
Do you think there's still an element of training recovery in the system?
Do I think there's an element of training recovery? Probably is the answer, but I think we've dealt with most of it. Because it's 5 years ago now since COVID. So even if you might have been appointed on a training scheme at that point and still be in the middle. But I think we did try very hard to deal with it. We did try to look at work differently. I mean, another bit of work that I lead is training. It used to be in the independent sector, but now non-NHS settings, which has moved to charitable and voluntary. How do we make sure training occurs? Because that's the NHS model. Training occurs where patients are seen. If patients are being seen elsewhere, then our training needs to flex to do that. But then you've got all the legal, contractual, regulatory things to try and work your way through. And there's no doubt we work in an astonishingly complex system.
Can I just, if we sort of go back to basics a little bit. So I'm a job and acute physician in Coventry, and I'm also a training program director for quality, actually. So some of the things that you're saying resonated, but I'm an educational supervisor. What does a good educational supervisor do?
Okay, what does a good educational supervisor do? Again, I think the first point is know your style and know what that trainee wants, and
Yes.
understand our trainees are very different. And I'm sure as they rotate through the different programs, you'll have noticed there are certain groups who work in a particular way dependent on the specialty they've been recruited to. So I think it's about knowing the curriculum, or at least knowing where to look at it. I think there's the basics of being able to open the portfolio and understand what that trainee needs in order to progress. I think there are things about having the formal conversations, but also the informal, which I know is more the clinical supervisor, but I think educational supervisors do have a role because they're actually very well placed to give careers advice, support over a period of a program when things go wrong, because you've got the longitudinal relationship over that program. I think it's listening. I think it's giving sensible and constructive feedback when things haven't worked the way they should have. And I think also if there really isn't the right fit, to say so. There's also something about how reports are written. Quite often we go into doctor mode and diagnose our trainees when we think they haven't. That's not what we're there to do. This is about educational progression. But also if you're really worried things are going wrong, escalate it through. And again, the hierarchical structures, they vary, but go to your trust first as an ES and as a CS. And usually the DMEs, and the education centre managers and departments, they want this to work as well, and they try and resolve that. So I think there's quite a few. I mean, it's not an easy job.
No, it's not, is it? And I think we often don't have enough time to do it well. I think that's what I struggle with. But reflecting on getting to know your trainee, that to me is the lynch point really of, is this going to be a good relationship or a not so good relationship? And going back to that first meeting with your trainee, what should that look like? Where should it be? It shouldn't be in a big crowded office where there's lots of phones going off in the middle of a ward. You should really take the time, the space, get to know them as a person.
Yeah. I mean, I used to take them for a cup of tea or a coffee.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I did have an office in those days. Those
Yeah.
many days of an office. It was an old on-call room, and it was like a really weird shape, and there was like a shower cubicle, and it was in the basement. And I just thought,
It's not Holby City then. It's not Holby City with a leather
I
sofa.
don't know how safe I would feel coming in to meet a person in an office in such an enclosed. Do you know what I mean? It's like encroaching on personal space. But sometimes we had to. But I would quite often say, well, let's meet in the canteen, or let's, here, I'll be here, and we'll take the conversation as it goes. And then but for some, you really do need to have it in a formal way, and maybe having someone else in the room might be helpful. Because I think the other thing at the sharp end is if training fails, and you end up having to release someone from training, they do take us to employment tribunals and other legal cases. And then again, that becomes my responsibility for the trainees that I'm responsible for to address and deal with. It doesn't happen often, but when it does, it's incredibly time-consuming, demanding, because you're writing legal cases, and then you're reliant on everything that every clinical supervisor, educational supervisor, and the rest has written to understand what happened in that particular way. But fortunately, that's my problem and not everybody else's, or the problem for postgraduate deans who do take that on behalf of the system. It's not the colleges or the GMC who, in general, deal with those individual trainee concerns.
Yeah. So documents is really important then.
Absolutely.
Yeah, documents.
So, Amy, as we're coming towards the end, I might ask Namita our favourite question. So if you could jump in a time machine and go back to yourself as a newly qualified doctor, probably about 23, getting on towards, what advice would you give yourself now, what you know, with all your wisdom?
What would I give myself? I would say get to know your team, and I mean the wider team. Understand what's required of you, but enjoy it, because I think medicine's still a fantastic career. It's an absolutely brilliant career. It is a privilege to do the work that we do. I've loved mostly. No, of course there've been hard times, but I've loved the job I've had, the jobs I've had, the things I've done, the opportunities I've had, and it is a privilege. And I think just enjoy it. People have worked so hard to get to that point at 23. Enjoy it, because there is still an awful lot of good stuff out there, and looking after patients is brilliant.
Thank you, Namita. I'm just going to summarize what I've sort of heard today, if that's okay. For first myth is you can't have a team without a firm rubbish. So we have teams, and team starts by knowing each other, by civility, and it's not just the direct people, it's the ward clerk, it's the cleaner, it's everybody around you. And as senior residents and new consultants and old consultants, we've got to role model those behaviors, and we've got to back our teams. We've got to create open conversations where there's trust, there's safety. We need to build that leadership capability. We need to prepare people for these transitions. And sometimes the best place to do that is over a cup of coffee and a cup of tea, not a portfolio. So I just want to thank you for an inspiring conversation, and please keep doing what you do. And I know it's tough out there, but we've got to keep shouting for education, because it is our future.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. And just one note for me, what I really loved what you said was that medicine is actually brilliant. It is a wonderful, wonderful job. And yes, it's difficult, but we love what we do. And, I think that says it all, doesn't it? It's still a brilliant job. So thank you very much.